Ivo, I'd love to start with you about much of your work has been around interpreting and reinterpreting classic works from the theater canon, Shakespeare, Williams, certainly O'Neill, Miller, now with this. Why do you choose to work with these texts? Why do you go back to sort of reinterpret works that have been interpreted so many times?
Totally by coincidence, I was asked at a very young age to teach actors in a school in Antwerp. I was 24, so I was teaching people that were 21 and 20. And then I thought, well, and I had 2 classes together, so that was a huge group. And I thought, well, what to do with them, you know? And then I thought of this play, a very difficult play, actually, Troilus and Cressida, William Shakespeare. And I think, well, let's do that, because I have this bunch of people, I can do that, and we'll see. And then I discovered for myself that I could make much personal work through the filter of this old text. Mm-hmm. So that what I've done before felt to me less personal when it was my own texts, you know, than when I used a text of Shakespeare. So I discovered a huge potential, even in a text that's over 400 years ago, or 50, 60 years ago, that I could tell even more about myself, about what I thought of the world, of people, of mankind, by using a text by a good author.
What kinds of plays are you particularly attracted to? And is it through character that you come into a play that you want to work on, or is it about the story?
And I think for me, when I read the text, or when I get it, for me it has to be a love affair. And so it's as if you, on the street, you look at somebody and you really are struck. Mm. That's what it is. So it has to touch me, to move me some way, but it can be moved sometimes in an intellectual way.
London right now has so much sort of rich political theater. I wonder what kind of scripts attract you, and if you were particularly drawn to plays that have such sort of keen messages to them, or if it's more about character or story.
It's more about character, I think. I think when you find somebody that you feel you can play, somebody you can flesh out, somebody that's interesting, complicated, confusing, you know, a mix of good, bad, all of that, that's multi-layered, and that's kind of, as an actor, what you're always looking for.
Ivo, did you find with the Miller estate any requirements that they had? Were they happy for you to take it in a very interesting direction?
Well, I had to communicate because there is a few slight little changes, and you know, but I brought together, for instance, the character of Louis in the play is in the original play 2 characters, you know, and I thought, well, bringing the lines together could make one much more interesting character for an actor to do, and they allowed me to do that. And for instance, there is. And when the immigration police finally comes, then there is a situation with almost extras who have no lines or one line. The family Dondero, they are called, you know, where these other 2 people are hiding upstairs. So I also asked to cut them, and they allowed me to do that. And I'm working now on The Crucible, it's the same. I had to, with Rebecca Miller, to talk directly about slight little changes. Some of them she allowed, some of them not.
You hesitated at first in doing A View from the Bridge, as I understand it. Can you talk a little bit about that and what sort of brought you
but I'm
along?
ashamed of that now, I have to admit.
We all have shame.
Yes.
It's okay.
And with Arthur Miller, I thought totally wrongly that his plays were too moralistic for me. And I mean in a more moralistic that, of course, they are about moral issues, but it's also like giving an opinion, like this is good and this is bad, which I'm not so interested in arts and in theater. I go to the theater to be confused, so that I'm provoked to think in a new way about things. But so I thought I had a preconception about this work. But then Jan Verswijfeld, my designer, he said to me, Ivo, you're totally wrong. You should read it again, and you should really reconsider it. And then I read it again, and then I immediately discovered, of course, reading it very carefully, that there was a gold mine of ambivalence in his work. You know, and now I'm in the middle of the Crucible preparations, of course. There's a gold mine of ambivalence. So I was totally wrong.
What was going on in your childhood, your adolescence, your adulthood when theater became meaningful to you? What was happening? Why did theater take hold of you?
I didn't really, I wasn't involved with plays and things at school when, you know, I wasn't a Twinkle Toes at the age of 5 and, you know, the kind of kid where people say, oh, he should be on the stage. I don't have any family in the business and I knew nothing about it. People on the stage, on the TV and in movies were separate from me. They lived in another world. I didn't think I had access to that world. In fact, my first, I suppose, introduction to performance was through music, through punk in '77. And I know Ivo, you know, probably had a similar kind of entree to, you know, what it meant to get out there and make a noise. And I enjoyed the idea that you could express your opinion to a lot of people. And ironically, I then ignored all of that and went off and studied law, which...
You both did that.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Okay.
I think law is a great catalyst for helping you to understand what you really want to do.
Having seen your work, I would have thought, or maybe would have assumed, maybe simplistically, that there was a very strong vision that you would come into the rehearsal room with, and to some extent want to be leading the actors toward that. But is that not how you work, or does it depend on the actors, maybe?
Depends on actors, but I try to work only with good ones. You know, that's really a mission in my life.
Right.
But he's you know, as a man, he's very astute. He kind of understands that you tell somebody something, it's totally different from allowing them to find it themselves. I mean, we fought Ivo on a lot of things in the rehearsal room. You know, we wore shoes originally, we had shoes, and after about a week he said, okay, I think we should all take off our shoes. And we all went, what do you mean take off our shoes? Why would we take off our shoes? And we, you know, we had a day or two of rebelling against that, and now then we didn't even think about it.
Why didn't you want to take off your shoes?
Well, I'd never done a play where we'd taken off. I was like, well, surely everyone's got to wear shoes. Right. It didn't occur to me that you could perform without shoes. And of course now, I don't think I can ever do a play with shoes.
Mark, were you just unreservedly enthusiastic about taking on the role of Eddie, or did you have any, not hesitations to play a great part, but qualms yourself?
No, I was looking at a pile of movie scripts. I've been doing movies for 12 years.
Sure.
In fact, the last play I did was at BAM. I'd done Uncle Vanya and Twelfth Night. One company did both plays.
Bridge Project, yeah.
The Bridge I don't think it was called the Bridge Project then, but it was Sam Mendes directed it, and it was fascinating because obviously the parts relate to one another in both plays, and it was a wonderful exercise. We did it at BAM, and it was such a wonderful production. I thought, how do you follow that? You know, what do you do now? And so suddenly the movies came calling, and I got involved with those. And 12 years later, there's a pile of movie scripts, and I'm reading them, and in there is a view from the bridge. And to be honest, it was head and shoulders above everything else I was reading, and the character was incredibly fascinating. And I just realized I had to do it. So there was no qualms about doing it. Somebody had interviewed me actually and said, you know, is it a while since you've been on stage? I said, oh yes, it's about 6 years. And they said, no, it's 12 years. So the time just kind of goes past. But what's marvelous about Miller, and just with reference to your earlier question, is how he can make these tiny little microcosms of stories so epic. And the question of, you know, what is art and what is the purpose of art in our lives is a really valid one, I think. Why do people go into a dark room, switch the lights off, watch a group of people pretending to be other people? What is that about? Why are we still doing that a couple of thousand years after the Greeks decided it was a good idea?